Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's top 10, it's in the top 10, but top 25 favorite episodes of the Star Trek franchise. I'm up to my number 9, so within that top 10, and my number 9 happens to be Sacrifice of Angels, the season 6, episode 6 of Deep Space Nine. So I'm joined here by, of course, the same but always great to have guests. Alyssa, thanks so much for joining.
Good as always to be here talking about your Star Trek Top 25. This is an episode that I particularly love myself, so I'm really looking forward to getting into it.
And of course, Darrin. Thanks so much for joining, Darrin.
Oh yeah, wouldn't miss this for the world. Yeah, another exciting episode. You know, we don't get a whole lot of giant space battle episodes, so whenever we get a chance to talk about those, they're always fun to revisit. So I'm stoked to get to talk about this kind of little end arc of the beginning of the Dominion War.
So, the first thing I want to get into is not really related to the episode, but it's because I was watching this podcast that's been covering Next Generation. They just started Deep Space Nine, and they were complaining about how Deep Space Nine's in SD, standard definition, because TNG was remastered to be in HD. And so they're like, oh, the show looks like crap. It looks like garbage. It's hard to go from HD to SD. And so I've been watching Next Gen myself on Blu-ray, so the high quality. So when I watched these episodes earlier today, I was like paying attention, like how crappy does it look? Not very. Like, I think I only noticed the difference because I paid attention to it. I don't know. I'm just never that into the sort of HD. Like, I won't notice it unless like someone points it out, or if I purposely try to notice it. I don't think it looks like shit. I think it looks fine. I don't know if it's worse on Paramount Plus than it is on DVD, which is what I was watching it on, but I don't know. Alyssa, do you notice any difference between HD and SD?
I really don't even know what HD or SD is. I mean, I hear these letters and I hear people apply them and say HD is better. I don't fucking. It all looks the same to me. Like, it looks fine. I mean, I did enjoy when they went back and remastered some of the original series episodes. I did notice, like, but I think that was more than just doing HD, right? I think they actually did some touch up to some of the scenes, and what I don't know that I noticed, but otherwise I don't really notice the difference between HD and it's not something I care about. It's not something I pay attention to. I guess if that's something that you're really keyed in on and something you're really connected to, then I guess it could be really bothering to you. But for me, it's just not something I even ever pay attention to or even am aware of. That it's not. I care about the story. I care about the characters. I care about the action. I can't really tell that much of a difference between SD and HD. It's just not something I pay attention to. So that's just me personally. I know that others have a different view on that.
Yeah, back in my day, it was all SD. There wasn't any of this fancy movie stuff. You wanted widescreen? You had to go to the movies. So I'm assuming you're talking about aspect ratio with this. Yes, are you actually talking about like the quality of
the quality of the picture?
Okay.
And I can tell the difference, but only if I pay attention and notice it. Like, it doesn't actively bother me.
No, and it probably depends on the size of screen that you're getting, that you're going to actually be able to tell any difference, and there might be a little bit in sharpness and stuff like that. I have like a regular big screen, flat screen TV like most people used to have. I don't have one that takes up a whole wall. I don't have my own cinema room. And if you were watching it on something like that, there might be a difference. But yeah, I'm with Alyssa. I can't really tell the difference.
Well, if you are curious, there is a on YouTube, you can find a clip of this episode, the battle sequence of this episode that was remastered in HD, that they did for the documentary. They didn't do the whole show because apparently it cost millions and millions of dollars to remaster in HD. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem worth it to me.
No, especially since you don't really have a the kind of like aftermarket purchase. There's not a whole lot of hard copies out there on things, or box sets, or things like that. There's not the same kind of drive, since everybody gets stuff digitally now. So how much you're going to really get back? Will you get more back if you do the digital sale? And how many people will go, why should I buy it if I have Paramount Plus and I can just watch it in whatever format that's there? So yeah, I don't really see what their drive is to invest in that type of stuff. They don't really seem to be investing in things on the same level that they used to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think they lost money when they did it for TNG, which is why they're never going to do it for DS9 and Voyager. But it's fine. It's not that big.
Well, yeah, because you can't do like one season. It's different if you're doing the original series, which has 3 seasons, though they're kind of chunky seasons. You know, oh yeah, you want to do 7 seasons of a show of 22 to 25 episodes each season?
They did it for Enterprise, but that's just because it was easier to do the way it was filmed or whatever.
Sure. Well, that would make a little bit more sense. Yeah.
Enterprise. But anyway, let's actually talk about the episode, because this is I wanted to talk about the whole sort of Dominion takeover arc, because we'll get to you in a second, Darrin. I'm really curious to what your reaction was, because you watched it for the first time. You were just seeing these episodes for the first time. By the way, we're going to try to avoid spoilers for like future episodes. I'm tempted to talk about a few things, but no, it's not necessary. But yeah, I'm curious to see how you think of it, because for me personally, I have a lot of nostalgia for it. I saw it when it first came out in '97. This is around the era. This is my party year. When I was 18, I was going out and getting stoned all the time. But in between that, I was watching these episodes. And it was a big deal, because having this kind of serialized storytelling was not a normal thing. Like, I know now, like every show does it. It's really commonplace. But I remember being like completely like awestruck by the fact that they actually did a continuous story over 7 episodes. And I remember watching the season 5 finale, and I assumed that they were going to do the standard Star Trek 2-parter, where season 6 is going to come back and they're going to resolve the situation and take back Deep Space Nine in 1 episode. But I read an article, I think on TV Guide, was saying that no, we're going to stick with this situation for a while. I was like, holy shit, really? And on top of that, the battle sequences was something also very new to Star Trek. Nowadays, with Mono Trek, you get over-the-top battle sequences every Tuesday. But back in the 90s, like I think this was unheard of. Like, they did it before with Way of the Warrior, but that was, those Klingons or whatever, not that big of a deal. But here they actually had 2 like full fleets on attacking each other. It's the first time Star Trek had ever done anything about that. And I remember, like, after watching the episode, going to my friends and getting stoned and be like, oh my god, there's a big fleet, and like making a big deal out of it. So yeah, I'm curious how you viewed it, Darrin. Has it, watching it in the first time, once you're already used to battles in Star Trek, you're already used to the serialized storytelling, how did it grab you?
Well, I mean, having grown up with like TNG and stuff like that and reruns of the original series, it was easier, I think, for me to kind of get back into that old mindset. And in fact, the fact that you have the old square television definition for the shows versus the widescreen, kind of helps, I think, that little time travel bit. So, in some ways it was cool to go back and see this, knowing what the technology and stuff was. So I didn't have the memory of having seen it originally back when it first aired. So I didn't have that level of nostalgia, but I could identify with the nostalgia of the time. So I think I got a little bit more out of it than maybe someone who had just seen all the modern space battles, because this is so cool, because you've got, it's like you got multiple Galaxy class, you've got a Kira class, and you've got some smaller ships, and you're like trying to pick out all the different forms and who do you have. And it's just, they filled up the whole screen with ships. It's not like 100 ships here, 100 ships here. They're like, okay, we got 400 ships versus 800 ships there of different sizes and classes. So it was kind of easy to drift back into that kind of joy of just, this is a big deal. And having seen all of the Star Trek episodes beforehand, knowing just what a big move this is for Star Trek, and that you could do that on this level of DS9, I think was really cool to see. And yeah, this is as we start to see that shift of old storytelling versus more modern storytelling, the shift from the episodic to the more serialized. And this was kind of a fun little bit to see. And you get excited as it's like, oh, you got a 2-part episode. Oh, you got a 2-part, and then they refer to that episode somewhere down the road. And then you're like, wow, okay, now we got like 3 or 4 episodes that are all continuing an arc. And you kind of start to get excited that you can see this long development. So I really appreciate the fact that they took the time to do it, because it would have been it would not have the same impact if they had just done the season opener and we get back DS9 and now we're back on to our regular episodic type storytelling. This was a big move, and I'm really glad that they made that choice, because I think it really paid off in the end here.
Yeah, Alyssa, your thoughts on the serialized arc?
Yeah, I don't remember what I thought of it when I first saw it. I don't even remember when I first saw it, because I'm thinking this was fall of '97. I would have just moved to Portland. I didn't really have a TV. I don't even remember when I saw it, but just looking at it from a modern perspective and looking at this relative to other shows at the time, also just other Star Trek at the time, this was pretty revolutionary to have 6 episodes in a row, 7 going back to the previous season, that are all one ongoing arc, and one in which our heroes are down and out. The station has been taken over, and so they're off doing other things. I mean, not all of our heroes; some of them are still on the station, but they have to be careful because the station is now run by Cardassians. So it's this really kind of intense, dark kind of storyline that continues for the first 6 episodes of the season. And I just think about that in context for Star Trek at the time, or TV at the time in general. And that's just pretty much unheard of. I think it was way ahead of its time. And so I'm just always just astounded that they had the guts to do this at the time, and then were able to pull it off. And then, of course, they would do it again for even more episodes in season 7. But I don't think that they would have attempted that if this had not been so successful. So, yeah, I just think of it as just ahead of its time, revolutionary, and I'm just in awe every time that I watch this 6 episode arc.
Well, yeah, I was thinking while I was watching this that this is definitely because Ronald D. Moore is a writer or a producer on the show, so I think this is definitely inspiration for him doing the arc in Battlestar Galactica when the Cylons took over the planet and the humans were occupied by them. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's sort of a precursor to that.
This was better, I think.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
I love the SG, but that particular arc wasn't. Well, it was fine. It wasn't the best of the.
Yeah.
We were just like, get back on the ship, get back.
Yeah, exactly.
We just did a lot of time jumps in that.
Yeah.
But anyways, this.
All right, so there's a couple comments I wanted to respond to in the chat. Jordan Johnson saying, I love this episode, but the episode before is just as good. I love when Deep Space Nine put characters in the worst possible spot and gets off with great drama, If I remember correctly, Alyssa, that was sort of more along your lines of thinking, because you kind of had both episodes back to back on your countdown, if I'm remembering correctly.
I did have them back to back, and I have this one ahead. This one was a spot higher, because this is the end of the arc. This is the conclusion. But I kind of think of them. I know there was a 6 episode arc, but those two really seem to go together to the point where I'm surprised it didn't have one title, part 1 and part 2. because that is basically one continuous story. Because we start the previous episode, Favor the Bold, with Cisco going, "We're going to retake Deep Space Nine," and then then this episode is about them doing that. So yeah, I definitely have this one higher ranked, but I also really love the previous one as well. It's kind of a lot of the setup for this one, and I don't think you really have this one without that one. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of people feel that way. I know that there's another YouTuber out there that actually liked Favorable better than this one. But for me personally, I never thought of these as a two-parter because they're always all just a part of the same arc. But that's just me personally. So I always separated in my mind. And it wasn't. Of course, I love Favor the Bold because it sets everything up, but it's not something I would put in my top 25. But it reminds me of something that I've been waiting to talk about. I've been holding it until this time. That when we did, or my number 24, if you remember, that was Reunion, the TNG episode. It was actually, for the longest time, it was supposed to be Behind the Lines. The episode 2 episodes before this, when Odo betrays them and Rom gets caught. I fucking love that episode. But anyway, so that was my number 24, and I was actually going into my top 25 thinking it would be my number 24. But then when it came down to it, I was like, should I have 2 episodes from the same arc? I probably shouldn't have 2 episodes from the same arc. I'll just have Sacrifice of Angels to represent the whole arc and get more variety in there. So I put Reunion in instead, which was my number 26. So I just swapped it to 24. All right, and then there was another comment. Oh yeah, Jake came in 99. I guess my actual question: should this have been a 6-episode arc, or all of season 6? Should this have been the season 6 finale, with the Dominion having the station longer? Well, apparently that's what the writers wanted to do, but the Rick Berman was refusing it and almost very begrudgingly let them do the 7-episode arc. But it's like, no, you can't do the whole season that way. And honestly, like, seeing how like the Zindi arc turned out and other stuff, I feel like it wouldn't have worked if they tried to do it over the entire season. I think it works better just being this little chunk.
It would have dragged out too long. I think it would have just been like, okay, just retake the station already.
Yeah.
And then they would have to still, you're going to do a whole season with 24 episodes, 25 episodes. They're still going to, they're going to have the silly episodes thrown in there. Like, like how in season 7, they stopped to play baseball in the holodeck in the middle of a war. I mean, they would still have to have those episodes.
You just spoiled it for Darren now.
So they stop and play baseball in the middle of a war. Spoiler, they stop and play baseball for an entire episode in the middle of a war. Sorry to spoil that for you.
You're muted, Darren.
I was going to say, all I could imagine if they had stretched this arc out is like, yes, and then you're going to have the episode with Quark needs to get some more Cardassian brandy because Gul Dukat's going to be visiting the whatever person, and like hijinks ensue. And I'm like, no, we don't. I agree. Much better to get a tighter, smaller number of episodes to really be able to tell a straight story, as opposed to having to be forced to fill it up because you've committed to half the season or 3/4 of the season for one thing.
As it is, they did 6 episodes and one of them was a dud. Like the whole stupid Alexander thing, like that was a waste of time. Like they actually could have done this in 5 in season 6. It
was more than a waste of time. They ruined Alexander's character.
Yeah. Yes. So even in just 6 episodes, still one of them was a dud.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine them stretching this out for an entire 25 episode season. So yeah.
Yeah, because all of those people that were like, from TNG, why don't we have more Alexander? They were a big crowd back in the day.
Well, I wouldn't mind them bringing back Alexander, but not like that.
And then Jordan also saying, "Oh, what if Voyager did this with the Year of Hell, making it the 6-episode arc?" It bloody well should have. And Brennan Braga and the writers wanted to, but Rick Berman had a tighter grasp over Voyager and wouldn't let them do it. 2 parts all he would give them.
See, I don't know. I feel like Year of Hell could have been stretched out a season because that's a different. I don't know. That's a different dynamic. That's not a thing like where you're waiting for the conclusion. Like when are they going to get out of this? Like I think that could have just been their existence for a season where everything is all fucked up. They would have to pull it back a little bit, like how Tuvok got blind and all those sorts of things. Like they might have to. Maybe not as many extreme things happen, but like just with the ship being in disarray and like they're constantly under attack, you could have stretched that out longer. But this is different. This is like you're waiting for our heroes to retake Deep Space Nine again, and so after a while you'll be like, "Come on, let's get on with this."
Yeah, and you can have like episodic episodes mixed in there, which is within the Year of Hell. I think it could have worked, but I still think if a 6-episode arc might have been more tight, better.
Yeah.
But of course they would have to change the ending so the time travel reset button isn't.
Yeah. That 6-episode arc was tight.
Yeah. If they could have just committed to the budget to have like a constantly slightly different opening episode as the ship is more damaged or has more like parts added onto it or anything, really to have seen that little shift would have been like everything.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the episode. So we get as we already started talking about the epic battle sequences, which I was completely blown away by. I don't know. I think for the most part, like overall in the arc, I found the stuff going on in the station more interesting than the stuff going on with Sisko and the Defiant. But even in this sequence, we get like O'Brien reciting a poem and Nog freaking out and whatnot, which is okay. But I think I just love the battle stuff so much. It was so intense, and as I said, it's the first time that Star Trek really did anything like this. And I kind of reiterate what I said this in another video, how I think that Starfleet or the Federation should have a military wing that actually handles war. It seems like they have the same exploration wing also handles wars. Doesn't seem to make sense to me, but regardless,
you mean like the Makos?
Yeah, like the Makos. That actually made sense to me. But whatever. They need to have the main characters in the war, so that's fine. But yeah, so I the whole battle sequences with the Sisko trying to do the plot of distracting the Cardassians and whatever. I think it was really intense, and again, it was like so. I think someone in chat was mentioning the CGI, which is 90s CGI. I don't think it was that bad for 90s CGI. I think it was actually quite good. And they couldn't have done this with models because with that it would have been prohibitively expensive. This is why in TNG you only saw 2 ships going do because that's all they could afford to do with models, and so they could do a lot more with CGI, and I think it really worked. And also someone in the chat mentioned that they reuse a lot of these same battle sequences in future episodes. So it's like they did this must have blown their budget during this episode. Maybe that's why they had the stupid wedding next and the Baral visiting the station. But anyway, but yeah, I think, future episodes, and I don't mind when they reuse footage. Some people are bothered by that. I'm not, because there were so many good sequences in this. But anyway, Darren, we'll start with you on this one.
No, I think that they all look great. And yeah, the CGI, you were just allowed to do so much more. And that's what was, I think, so exciting about this, is it wasn't like, again, a couple of ships out there. Oh, maybe you got up to 10. They filled the screen with ships. The only part, of course, the fanboy in me part is like, is one of those the Enterprise? And then I'm trying to remember, like, where were the movies at this point? Are they still rebuilding it? Is it the EX that's coming up? And And obviously, at that point, it would just be prohibitively expensive to have Patrick Stewart jump up for a scene or do something like that.
Just for the record, this would have been after First Contact, so it would have been when the Enterprise E was around.
Yeah. So they're like, no, we're just doing all the classic stuff, just what we have already created in their budget. And I think that was another fun thing is they could use so many of the different models that they had already done for the show and shows and stuff, and now they could just kind of fill the screen and do all of that. So I think they actually did a great job in considering, and I think it still looks actually really good. I mean, obviously it's not the same thing of stuff that we're seeing right now, but it's very consistent. It doesn't feel it doesn't have the WB feel to it, to be honest. It still looks better than that. I guess we've got this was Paramount, UPN, United Paramount.
No, this was syndicated. DS9 was just syndicated.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, man, where were they putting the Star Trek deals at these times? But yeah,
because Voyager started on the UPN.
Yeah.
So Deep Space Nine just stayed in syndication.
Yeah, it stayed in syndication.
Okay, I remember.
Voyager on UPN. And that's why the producers and everyone cared more about Voyager, because they're like, DS9's in syndication, who cares? But Voyager had more pressure being on the network and being the biggest show on the network that was keeping it alive too.
Yeah, well, I was thinking the same thing. I was just rewatching it today, and I was like, "Yeah, where's the Enterprise? Where is the Enterprise anyway?" It's so funny that when it's not about, when it's a different show, like the other people cease to exist. It seems like people from the other shows, like, is it like Christopher Pike and Discovery, how they were like, "Oh, we're fighting this big war with the Klingons, but we don't want the Enterprise in it. You guys just keep exploring. Go up and explore. We don't want you to be a part of the war." Is that what they did with the Enterprise? No, don't worry about the war. Just go, go have Data lose his memory and just go on your adventures of the week. Don't worry about this. But yeah, anyways, I think that CGI is actually pretty astounding for the 90s. So, like, I think, you definitely watch it now and go like, oh, yeah, well, we can do way, way better than this now. I mean, the look of it now is much better. And yet, like, it's not one of those, like, really cheesy, like one of those 80s or 90s sci-fi shows that you watch where it's just like cringeworthy, where it's just hard to even watch. Like, I think it still holds its own. Like, I think it ages pretty well, even if isn't up to the standards of today's CGI. And I do still think of it in terms of the time. Like, this was unheard of. I also remember being very excited. I think I'm more so of season 7. When we get into more of the war stuff there, but I remember being very excited about these battles and like, holy shit, like they don't do this in Star Trek. So it was, again, I hate to sound like a broken record using the word revolutionary. This also was, it was not something that Star Trek did.
Well, but I think also there was a benefit of the space battles all having a continual view of the scene. It's not like they're the CGI of a monster that's coming to attack Major Kira or something, where you can see how well is it rendered. With the space battles, they all kind of look the same, and Trek has at this point developed this very crisp, clean, streamlined ship view of everything, and all the different color coordinations. You got the green, or the Romulans were green. You got the purple here or the Cardassians were green. You got the purple for the Jem'Hadar. You got the blue for the Federation. So I think that kind of simplified color scheme and real clean lines keeps things looking very good, because you don't really have to have that, like it says, those render problems that you have when you're overlaying with live action.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so might reach back into the previous episodes a little bit, because I want to talk about Odo and the female changeling thing, because as I mentioned, the episode Behind the Lines, I freaking loved that storyline with, Kira being like, oh, don't link with her, and he's like, yeah, no worries, and he does. I've heard people refer to that as like akin to sex, but I'm not really into that analogy, because they're linked together in the Great Link all the time. So you're telling me the Great Link is one giant orgy? Like, I don't really see it that way, but they did actually have actual sex as well in one of these episodes. But it's interesting because that leads to this episode where Odo's kind of having like buyer's remorse and starting to realize like all this shit, and he's starting to come out of it and be like, oh, wait a second, you're like committing like genocide and killing everyone I've lived with and everything. And I do wonder, like, when the female changeling eventually went, oh, I'm gonna kill Kira, like, that was really dumb of her, because that was like directly pushed Odo to to betray them and help Kira. I wonder if or maybe that was a test, and she was thinking, if he can live with it, then he's gonna be with us. But she should have realized that it was pushing it too far, and that's really ultimately what snapped him out of it. And it was really great seeing him show up at the end with his deputies or whatever. But yeah, I love this arc. Like, this is part of the it's not just like because we get cool battle scenes, which it's always a bonus though. But there's a lot more character stuff going on during this arc, and I think Odo's arc was amazing. Alyssa, we'll start with you on this one.
Well, I think she told Odo about Kira because she was really overconfident about how connected he was to the link, and she was just absolutely 1,000% certain. And even at the end of the episode, Wei Yun's like, "Where's Odo? Is he coming with us?" Like, not now, but it's only a matter of time. Like, she's so confident that he is. There's no possible way you can resist the link. So that's where I think she was coming from and telling him about Kira. Like, I just feel like she was overconfident with that. But yeah, I did enjoy the Odo arc, which is really good for me because I usually don't like it when they take one of our heroes and like make them turn bad for a little while or make them turn evil. It usually makes me cringe because I just feel like most of the time it's just contrived and I don't really buy it. But here, like, I actually do really buy it because she really does sell this great link.
Are you thinking of like Data turning evil in Descent?
That's one example. Yeah, that's probably one of the worst examples.
Yes.
But yeah, just all throughout fiction in general, any show that I watch where they try to make one of our heroes evil for a little bit, and usually it just feels forced and contrived, and I just don't buy it. And they're just trying to, I don't know, shock you or whatever. But the fact that I do like this means that speaks volumes. That means that they did an incredible job at writing, and that Renee, I hate trying to pronounce his name. The guy who plays Odo does an excellent job selling it.
Auberginois?
Auberginois, yeah.
Something like
he doesn't.
I'm probably butchered like, no, not that. Yeah.
It sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah, so he really sells it. The actress who plays the female changeling really sells this idea of the Great Link to the point where I really could buy that it would affect Odo in that way. But this episode is when you start to see the walls start to crack a little bit. And again, I do think she didn't realize, she was just overconfident about the link, and but we as the audience can see like, well, Odo is starting to come out of it a little bit, and it's kind of starting to give some hints of the romance between him and Kira to come, that he's in love with Kira. The whole subtext is that he's in love with Kira, and that's what breaks him out of the link. His love for Kira is stronger than the link, and I think the female changeling was confident that it would be the other way around. She just can't understand the concept of loving a solid. Like, how can you love one solid more than this amazing link? Like, she just couldn't get it. But I think that's ultimately what broke him out of it.
Well, yeah, and I think that this again is one of those nice benefits that you get from having several episodes and really to slowly develop a story, because you could actually have the temptation of Odo and see as he does it, and then how he battles with himself to when he kind of almost falls completely prey to it, and then obviously here last minute pulls himself in time to, help save the day. It's so I do love the fact that they had the chance. I agree with you, Alyssa. This is one of those where I'm just like, oh, and this is I'm going to turn against my friends bit, and then I'll be pulled out of it. So it is a little bit of a trope, and I think in some ways, at least in my mind, it does suffer a little bit from it. But because they take their time and they kind of work at it, and you have some really great performances, I think they actually make it work. Yeah, the way that I always kind of looked at the link, at least the way that it seemed to have effect, is probably some sort of almost like acid trip hallucinogen type experience if you're rolling in all these visions and emotions and changing shifts. So that's pretty much what it kind of felt like. Oh, I'm sorry, Odo, you're thinking a little too clearly. Go back to the link. Back to the link. They'd just be like, oh yeah, man, you're right. This is cool. This is just a little link at it. So you had to go cold. You had to go cold turkey, man. It's gonna be hard for him, I'm sure, but I believe that he can do it. But yeah, and the other one, of course, is the classic villain trope of, oh, you threaten the family. Why do you do that? You threaten the family, or you shoot the dog, or you shoot the best friend, or at some point the villain has to make that ultimate threat to cross the line. And yeah, I think the threat to, well, Kira's obviously the thing holding you back, so we'll kill her for you, and you'll feel so much better afterwards.
Yeah, and I actually really agree with your drug analogy. That's kind of how more of I thought of it rather than the sex analogy. I think that it does seem like he's addicted to the link. I think I do kind of think of it like the best LSD trip you've ever had, but it just keeps on going. That it's just that
it's an LSD trip you can actually share with someone else.
Yeah, that it's. Yeah, or ecstasy might be another analogy, but yeah, I think that. Yeah, I definitely see that a lot more than the sex analogy. So I think that's a very good point.
No, that actually makes a lot of sense, because in this scene where after Odo betrays Kara and Kara goes to yell at him, he's acting like he's drugged out, like he's zoned out. He's like, it doesn't matter. Like he's like he's all zoned out.
Sorry, Kira, man.
Yeah.
You just don't see the universe as clear as I do, man. You just gotta open your mind.
Yeah, he acts like he's high. He really does. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about I want to talk about one of my favorite scenes in this episode. That's why I chose as my username, the scene with Dukat and Wei Yun. I think someone in the chat mentioned this is the best Dukat episode. I totally agree. In fact, I think in my video when I was choosing best episode for character, I chose this episode for Dukat. Because it just really shows just how fucked up he is. And I love that scene between them, because Wayne's another fucked up character. And I've been loving, that's another great thing, though, about the whole arc was their dynamic as well. When Wayne's like, keep smiling. That was a funny thing. But this scene I absolutely love, where he's talking talking about, oh, the conquerors of the Federation. And William's like, aren't you being a bit premature? And then he's talking about Williams, talking about how the key is to keeping the Federation is Earth. It's just going to be rebellion's going to be there. I actually disagree with Wayun. I would think something like Andor, and I don't know if they call it Andor, but the Andorian homeworld, Andoria maybe is what they call it. Something like that, or like Vulcan maybe, and also they should worry more about the Klingons. But Earth is like a paradise, and they're all like chilled and relaxed. It doesn't seem like that would be the key part for a rebellion. But regardless, he talks about like annihilating its population. Ducat's like, no, you can't. You have to get people to acknowledge you're grateful, that your brilliance, and it's like, and then you kill them. I'm like, if you need to. I just thought this was an amazing scene, and also the way that like Wayun kind of humors Ducat, just laughs at him. Anyway, Alyssa, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, really gives you insight to his character. He also mentions like, after all I did for the Bajoran people protecting them, is there a single statue of me? And he means this seriously. Like, and Wayun is just kind of laughing. He's like, I would imagine not. But he seems genuinely offended that there wasn't a statue of him on Bajor, where he is basically their Hitler times a million. That this is how far out of reality that he is, but he really believes this. He really believes that this is how you win, is that you show you show your victims like that you convince your victims that you're really there to protect them, which he obviously never succeeded with in Bajor, and would never succeed with the Federation had they won. So he's just completely delusional. Even before we see at the end, he goes off in the deep end, and we'll have a follow-up episode. I don't know how far Darren's gotten, but so I don't want to spoil too much, but there is an episode that comes up that follows up on his insanity. And so we see him go completely off the deep end. But even before he goes off the deep end, he's already delusional. And I think this scene is a perfect illustration of that. It's just a really great character sketch. And I know I'll have other opportunities to say this, but Mark Alamo is incredible in this episode. And I would agree this is the best Ducat episode.
I'm so excited that this was your favorite scene, because watching it, I was like, the rest of the episode's good, but it's almost just for this scene between these two actors, between these two characters, that to me makes the whole episode. Because you have Ducat just lost in that colonial viewpoint. Why doesn't India have more statues of me up there? It's like, well, there's probably some reasons, man, that you just don't understand. So it's so fun, and his viewpoint of what victory is and how you have to defeat your enemies. No, you keep them alive and make them suffer until they realize how great you are, and then they will support you. I mean, it is, he's almost, the fact that he didn't do a mwahaha laugh is really just, I think, a benefit to Mark's performance overall, that he didn't need to pull it off. And of course, I can never say too much about Jeffrey Combs. And he is so perfect as Wayun in this. And the way that he kind of measures and watches Ducat, because they've played the back and forth with like how Wayun doesn't get strategy, but early in the episode when they're looking at how Cisco is attacking and everything, and then you have Ducat, oh, well, you don't see it. And of course, he's got to play that he knows more than he does. So Ducat gets to be kind of like on top in that discussion. And here in this one, this is like Wayun's territory exactly. Just seeing how people view themselves. What are the maneuverings that he can do? and his little joy at the end of it, where he's just laughing. He's like, it's just so delightful. It's so, it's just, you could see where he's like, I have gotten the perfect view of Dukat. Anything that was missing in my viewpoint has been either confirmed or identified with this little moment. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful little scene of character and really plays up where they each go afterwards.
As much as I love Shran and Artemis on Lower Decks, this is easily Jeffrey Combs' best performance.
You stole the words right out of my mouth. I was waiting for Darrin to stop so that I could say that same thing. This is by far Jeffrey Combs' best role, and he is great in all of his roles. Well, up front, I never cared for. But that's not really his role. But. And maybe the weird dude who tried to make the hologram of Kira.
Oh,
right. But yeah, let's not talk about that. But Shran was a great role for him, and then he made his comeback in Lower Decks. It was as a voice for Artemis. That's a great role, but nothing compares to his role as Wayun. It will always be his best role.
Yeah, I can see that. I love Shram. But yeah, I get very excited when he is here because there is just a subtlety he can play with Wayun that is just kind of delicious to watch.
Yeah, so Brandon in the chat saying, I'm thinking about the similarities between Dukat and Daemon Targaryen. That's an interesting comparison. I think Daemon isn't as delusional, and he doesn't require as much love and attention. I think as Dukat does, but they're both kind of a bit out there, crazy in violent ways. Cool. And then also we got another comment from Jordan saying that my favorite scene with Dukat is him telling Zial that enemies of the state must be punished. Another great insight into his psyche. Yeah, that's very Cardassian of him. I would expect something like Garrick would say something like that too. That just seems to be the fascist Cardassian mentality.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, there are Nazi occupation allegory here. So
cool. All right. So so then we got I love the little scenes between Kira and Damar. Particularly in the previous episode when she's they're kind of jabbing at each other when he got demoted, and she was like, "Careful, Damar, you don't want to end up doing waste extraction," and sort of the jabbing that they have, and then when she kicked his ass when he tried to force Zial to go with him, which was kind of funny. It was great seeing his ass get kicked, but then he kind of gets his payback when he's ordered to arrest her, and it was really nice where he's like, "Go ahead, please resist." It was like, "I beg you," and but of course Kira's smarter than that because she was outnumbered and people had weapons, so they went and got arrested. And I don't know, the one kind of criticism I had about this, not a criticism, more like a nitpick that I had about this arc was that they referred to their little group as a resistance cell, but it was just 4 people meeting in a room, including Jake and Lita. This is not
the one thing that bugged me most about this arc is that they allowed the captain of their enemy, the primary enemy, the son of him, to be on the station and just wander around under the pretense that he's a reporter. And then they're like, "Oh my God, he's fighting back against us! Whoa, who could ever see that coming? Oh my God!" I mean, it's a little bit too much for me. I think that would be my biggest critique of this arc, is that they allowed Jake to even be there in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, that was plot contrivance because they wanted to keep him in the show and give him something to do. And I think throughout the show, especially the later seasons, they don't really know what to do with Jake, and sometimes when he appears, they just try to come up with bullshit like the Muse coming and saying right and shit. They just really don't know what to do with him, or the whole Red Squad bullshit. So yeah, that was a bit confounded. It was just a way to keep him in the show.
Honestly, the best part about that whole little arc of his, I know it wasn't even in this episode really, was when Wei Yun is like listening to stories and so on. It's like, yeah, but you seem to have an obvious bias towards things. So tell you what, you keep working at it. One of these days, I'll let one of your things get out. Because yes, of course I'm stopping all of your transmissions. You fool. You know, it was just, again, also Wei Yun and Jeffrey Combs. But yeah, to me, that was the best part of that little whole arc thing.
Yeah, which still again begs the question: if you're stopping all those transmissions from going out in any ways, why are you allowing him to be there as a reporter? Yeah. So the plot can happen, and Cyril often has something to do.
Yeah. Exactly.
If you did, just have him be like, okay, I'll give you the story to send out, and you can be the propaganda for the station masters on that. You know, they could have done something differently, but they didn't.
Yeah. But so yeah, then we get the scene where Quark breaks them out of the cell, which I another great scene. I actually love this scene. It's such a pivotal moment for Quark, and it's actually a bit humorous too, because Quark and Zial are, breaking in, and they don't really know what to do because they're like, tell the Jemadar, nobody move, and he's like, no, take down the cell. It's like, wait, you just told them not to move. Okay, nobody knew except for you. Now take down the force field. And the Jemadar just like, yeah, fuck this. I'm gonna let this guy push it around. And Quark, you can tell, I love this, how Quark like freaked out, and shot them, and he was like frozen there. And like, holy shit, did I just kill them? And then Jake had to like drag him away because he was just all like completely in shock. Yeah, it was a great scene, and it was also good getting Kira and Ram with their plan to, sabotage the station and everything. As I said, I've enjoyed like the station stuff more than the Defiant stuff. But Darren, we'll start with you on this one.
Oh yeah, that was fun. I mean, it's always fun seeing Quark doing things that obviously make him extremely uncomfortable. And even the whole, like, when he first grabbed ZL, he's like, "Do you know how to make a souffle?"
Yeah, Hasperat souffle.
Hasperat souffle. Thank you. What you don't expect. And then, of course, they're projecting like something is being hidden in the souffle. And while he's inspecting, Zoral just reaches over and knocks him out with a hypo spray. So that was kind of, again, little changes of expectations were fun. But yeah, I do like that this is kind of like, you see that Quark is on this change over himself to going from I'm hiding to now I'm going to actually participate and do things. So I kind of like that little bit of moment that you get here as well. And obviously from audience, we're like, yay, finally, you got to do something to save the mines. Yeah. So we were hoping that that's able to get taken care of now. But yeah. That's again, fun scene. It's just good to kind of wrap up this little bit, and I do like seeing Quark uncomfortable.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite scenes too. I love seeing Quark outside of his comfort zone. Yeah, this is something he doesn't usually do, and doing something. I mean, to be noble, there's no profit in this for him. This is, I mean, he's literally just helping his friends, which is way outside, that more than anything is outside of his comfort zone. There's a constant struggle with Quark's character, and I think you see it more as the series goes on, between trying to maintain this air of like, I only care about profits, and he does, but there's this underlying like actual gentle soul who actually cares for his friends, and that he like very much does everything he can to hide that. But it peeks its little head through sometimes, and this is a prime example of that. And yeah, the way that the scene goes down is just humorous. And he shoots him and goes, "Wah!" I also feel like the Jim Hadar, maybe also speaking of overconfidence, maybe a bit overconfident because they kind of like look at each other first and have this smug little exchange. And like, if they had just shot Quark earlier, that they would have been fine. But they're like, this guy's a joke. And they kind of look at each other and give Quark time to go, "Wah!" And then he's just standing there holding the phasers. And Kira's like, "Quark, get the door." And he's like, "The door?" And he's still frozen there, and Ciel has to go and get the door because he can't move. Yeah, that is great, and this was a huge step forward for this character. I mean, because he had really never done anything like this before. So I really love this scene for Quark.
Well, and it's that another one of those payoffs for the past several episodes, and even the beginning of this one. You can see how resistant Quark is to be involved in anything. He's like, "Yeah, you can use the bar, but I don't really want to do it." And everything that's mentioned, he's super cautious and doesn't want to get close to. So yeah, this really does pay that whole off. It's like a great scene unto itself, and then when you link it with everything else that they've built up to, it really makes it more satisfying, I think.
Yeah, and also him doing that is what protected him from being arrested, because they didn't have any idea Quark had anything to do with it. They didn't go to arrest Quark because he was like keeping his distance. Is like, "No, I don't. Okay, you can hang out at the bar, but I don't want to. I have nothing to do with this." And that ended up paying off for him because no one suspected that Quark had anything to do with it, so they didn't even arrest him.
Yeah, because like you said, no profit in it.
Yeah.
And again, I know this wasn't this episode, it's Behind the Lines again. Another reason why I love that episode is when Quark was drunk and he went into the thing, into the resistance meeting. It was like, "I just had some canar with Damar. Hey, that rhymes." Like, that was a really funny. That's when he started to get involved with it. Yeah, so in the chat, Jordan was saying that doesn't that scene remind you of the breakout scene in The Search Part 2? Yeah, kind of a little bit. There was a really great quote from that scene too. That's when Garrick is like, "What, you don't know the plan? The plan is first I pretend to be their friends and then I shoot you." One of the best Garrick quotes. Absolutely love that. Anyway,
That wasn't even the real Garrick, though, right? If I recall, wasn't that part of their whole like?
Yeah, it's in their head, so it wasn't
in their head. It wasn't actually Garrick.
Yeah.
But
yeah, which sucks, but it shows how we think of Garrick. Though.
Yeah,
but Garrick would totally do that. You know,
Yeah.
it is in character.
Let's see. So I really like. So we get the ending sequence when they're Kira and Rom are like shooting the phasers, and Odo shows up, and they're like, "Oh, that's Bajoran phaser. Why are there Bajoran phaser?" And it's like, it seems like they should have picked up that it would have been Odo helping them, but whatever. I know that it didn't seem like, because last time it seemed like he was completely neglecting. But yeah, but that was pretty good. And then having them, I love the way that this is edited. This is something I really like paid attention to a couple times, because I read a novelization version of this episode and it didn't do it justice, because it just told from one person's perspective from one chapter and then the other. And it made me appreciate more how they just flash cut, like boom, 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 show Kieran and Rom trying to sabotage, and they show Ducat and Damar getting ready to start. They show Cisco on his way, like the boom, 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 cut through that. I think it's one of the best examples, I think, of editing, and it's really intense. And I remember when I first saw this and they actually took down the minefield, I was like, what? That was absolutely not what I was expecting. I was like, oh yeah, they're gonna stop him just in the nick of time and save the day. This is always what happens with Star Trek. But no, the freaking minefield went down, and that it always like subverts expectations, like in the best way possible. I just love this sequence. Alyssa, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I do too. The way that they cut it, they show Rom going, got it. And then they show Dukat going fire, and so it looks like Rom turned off the weapons first. So you're expecting them to not be able to fire. You're like, oh, they're going to go. Oh, the weapons don't work. But then you see the station firing. You're like, what? And then Rom's like, uh-oh, I didn't do it in time. But they really cut it to mislead you into thinking that Rom did do it first, and that just really adds to the subversion of expectations. So you're like, what the fuck? What are they gonna do now? So this is it? This is the end of the show now? It's just like the Dominion ships are gonna come through, and then they're just gonna be devastated. Like, this is the end of Deep Space Nine. So yeah, that I really liked that as well.
They did that well. I kind of liked, again, it's like our heroes are finally getting their advantage. You think that they're trapped, you think that they're under, going to be defeated. Odo finally snaps out of it, which was a great turn of expectations. Once they said that it's Bajoran, I was like, oh, because they still have Bajoran security, but I didn't think that Odo would necessarily be with him. So kind of like that. And you're right, I love how they did the kind of quickness and efficiency in this of like, yeah, there's no time to do anything, just to maybe know why. Or she's like, maybe I'm not to know why. It's like, well, there's no time for that, but I think you know. And it plays all of that stuff we have set up, and of course, why he even turned on that. So I love the brevity in the storytelling to keep the momentum going, because that is the one thing that really pays off well in this scene. Alyssa, like you said, it's fire, got it. We see the beam. It's like, oh, what? I thought that he said he stopped it, and we didn't. And I mean, honestly, just even watching now, I'm like, oh heck, what are they gonna do now? Yeah, it really does kind of like heighten up, and those last minute twists don't always work. I think it really worked well here, and I think part of it was, one, just the choices they made, but two, because they edit it so quick and precise, and you're not sure which one is going. I think it really played itself out very well.
All right, so I'm going to get to this scene, which I'm very curious to get your opinion on this, Darrin, because a lot of complaints that people have, or the chief complaint they have about this episode, is that is the Deus Ex Machina, where literally they're gods, the prophets are gods, and they interfere and save the day. And a lot of people complained about this before, but I've been on the record, and I've said this on my channel before, where I disagree. I don't think it's a Deus Ex Machina. I mean, I can kind of see where people are coming from, especially if you're just watching this season. But I think if you take everything in context to what they were building at, the way the prophets has already been established to be friends of Bajor, and they have Cisco as their emissary, it's a definite retcon from the first episode, but they've already gone through several episodes where they made it clear that the prophets see Cisco as their emissary and as the Cisco, and they need to help Bajor, like we are of Bajor. And so I think it would have been out of character if they didn't interfere, like if the prophets didn't interfere. I think it was totally it made a lot of sense. I think it was earned. It was built up to. And more than that, I love the whole sequence with the prophets, like just fucking with Cisco. And it does make me wonder, though, if Cisco even thought of trying to convince them of interceding when he went into the wormhole. Maybe that was why, because sort of nitpick that I just thought of when I was watching it just now is, if he really wanted to stop the Dominion fleet from coming in, he could have just collapsed the wormhole. But which is what they did in that fictional reality in The Search. But I mean, I understand they wouldn't want to cut the prophets off from the Bajoran people, but losing the other Alpha Quadrant, I don't know. So I don't know. My headcanon is that knew that he was going in there to convince the prophets to intercede. But anyway, so Darrin, I want to get your opinion on if you think this is a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, it is totally Deus Ex Machina. They're literally the gods in the machine of the wormhole that decide of what they want to do with it, So now, is it a justified Deus Ex Machina? Yes. Is it still kind of cheap storytelling?
Oh.
Darren's frozen.
Hopefully he didn't lose connection. He might have.
I feel like we're in Timescape.
Yeah.
Or Darren's just like frozen.
Yeah, hopefully he'll come back. But anyway, do you want to give your thoughts on this whole ending?
Yeah, well, I wanted Darren to finish his thoughts, but I guess we'll have to wait and see if he can recover.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This isn't a Deus Ex Machina because the prophets are characters on the show, and they're not technically gods. They're advanced alien beings that the Bajorans worship as gods, but by every definition, they're not gods. They're just a non-corporeal being. And they are characters on the show, and this is part of their character development, that they are of Bajor. Cisco is their emissary, that it would make total sense for them to want to protect Bajor. So I thought it was actually a brilliant storytelling. And it allowed them to kind of have that tension earlier, that misdirect that we talked about. We're like, how the fuck are they going to get out of this? Now, I was just watching this right before we came on, and I was watching to see if it looked like there was any indication that Cisco was intentionally going in to talk to the prophets. It really doesn't look like he was. He even says to them, I didn't ask to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. Put me back so I can. So it looks like he was 100% just trying to take out as many Jem'Hadar ships as he could with his one ship. And that's all he was doing. Because he even tells them, like, I didn't ask to talk to you. Put me back. So I don't think there's any indication that he did think of talking to the prophets, but I thought that maybe he should have thought of talking to the prophets. Like, he probably should have gone in there intentionally. Hey, come on, help us out here. But he really wasn't. Not until they captured him, and then he was like, okay, well, since I'm here, could you do me a favor, throw me a bone here?
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. I just like to pretend it's the other way around, because if that's the case, why didn't he just collapse the wormhole?
Yeah.
But anyway, Darren, if you wanted to finish your thoughts,
I feel like I cut off just as I started there. Anyway, all I was saying is that I'm agreeing. If his intention was originally to really stop them, he would have collapsed the wormhole, because that's what they established that he would be able to do. I didn't know why he was flying in there, because obviously the way the discussion on the bridge is, this is one ship against several thousand, you're going to be screwed. What kind of stand is that? So the fact that he's like, I didn't come here to speak to you. It's like, well, why else are you here? That's the only thing in my mind that I'm thinking is why you went in the wormhole.
Yeah.
But he didn't, though. He went there to just, he should have, but he literally went in there to just try to take out as many ships as he could before he died. Like, that seemed like every indication, which is dumb, but it looks like that's what he was doing.
Sure. So I guess he would just then leave the wormhole for someone else to destroy, or just to let the the Dominion do their invasion. So, that's all that I was thinking. Yeah, that he wasn't really going to be able to stop anything. But I do think, like I said, yes, it makes sense the prophets would protect and they would do this thing. And they do sort of imply that they change his fate a little bit. There is some timeline change for him, because he's like, you are of Bajor. but now you won't be. So now you won't be comfortable when you're at Bajor. And there's this whole speech at the end that seems to indicate
yeah. So what they say exactly is you're of Bajor, but you will find no rest there. That's okay. What they say.
The impression that I got when I watching it was like they had to do something to change things, but to keep him around so they could do this thing. Either way, while it does make sense for the way that they have structured the world and the prophets and the relationship with Bajor, it feels like a solution that is entirely out of the hands of the Federation or the efforts of the crew. Like when it all comes down to it, then we're just like, well, you can't die, so we'll just take care of it, okay? And then we're cool, right? Sort of is how it felt like. So while it makes sense, it is the most disappointing thing about this episode. I wish they had made other choices, I guess, really.
I don't know. I disagree. I like this one. Because I think the reason why I don't think it's, or one of the reasons why I don't think it's Deus Ex Machina, because typically Deus Ex Machina is when you write yourself in the corner and you don't know how to get out of it, and so you have the god intercede. But they had an easy out. Like they could have had Rom take down the weapons before the minefield went down. That could have been their easy out, but it seems like they wrote it this way purposely so that they could include the prophets. So for me, that doesn't really come off as like contrived writing. That comes off as we have these established characters, we want to bring them into the story and have them get involved.
Yeah, and it's important for their characters moving forward. I think this is a turning point for the prophets moving forward in the series. So yeah, I 100% agree. Like, I think it was a way to get these particular characters involved rather than they could have ended it any number of ways. They could have also had Cisco to close the wormhole, but I think they didn't write it that way because they wanted the prophets to be a part of the story.
Well, and like I said, I'm always happy to eat crow. If they end up making this choice pay off in storytelling ways down the road, then obviously, yeah, I'm all for it. There are tons of shows that I watch where I'm like, oh, why did they make this choice? And then realize down the road, oh, these are the events that are, subsequent off of them doing that. I think that works better for a larger storytelling, but it's also important, I think, because that does lean more towards the serialized nature of the Dominion War versus the episodic nature of the previous episodes and most of the rest of the Star Trek of this period. So, I mean, again, I love those choices, and I would be excited to see that. I'm just saying, taken unto itself without knowing what else is to come forward, to me, it's one of those where, again, it was like, look, this makes sense, and you've justified your decision, and of course these people would be involved. I just wish you had a little bit more control over your destiny as opposed to God saving your butt.
I mean, yeah, I definitely get that a little bit, but he at least like talked him into it, so he did have some agency.
Yeah, well, that is true. That is true.
Yeah. Well, I also said when you were gone that technically the prophets aren't actually gods. They're non-corporeal beings that the Bajorans worship as gods. So they're aliens, really, which Cisco always referred to them as the wormhole aliens, but eventually I think he gives in and just calls them the prophets because that's what the Bajorans call them. But they used to call them the wormhole aliens because that's literally what they are. They're aliens. They're non-corporeal. They're obviously, more advanced, more powerful than humans are. But I mean, that's pretty much all gods in Star Trek is these super advanced aliens.
It's the Arthur C. Clarke alien. Anything advanced, sufficiently advanced, is indistinguishable from magic.
Right.
What does God need with a starship?
Yeah. Well, and I'm also thinking of Apollo.
Yeah.
And the original series. It turns out the Greek gods just aliens. Just super advanced aliens.
Super advanced, but still petty aliens. That universal constant.
All right. So, yeah. So then we'll jump to the ending where, Damar kills Ziyal, which was I don't know. it was a bit heartbreaking, and I think they definitely needed it for, especially they were building Zial earlier in the past couple episodes, and Ducat's sort of obsession with her. And I do buy, like, it wasn't just her dying that drove him nuts. It was also the fact that he was like, there was no question in his mind that he was about to win the war and conquer the
Victory
Federation.
was within our grasp. Bonjour, sir, we've got to go. Bonjour. But victory was within our grasp.
Yeah, so all that, I totally buy that he just went bonkers. And I know there's a lot of people out there, and again, we won't get into future stuff, but there's a lot of people out there that didn't like this choice of making Ducat crazy and what they did next. Some people refer to the next episode he appears in as the destruction of his character, which I think is nonsense. I think it was the natural progression, because we talked about in that scene with Wayun. He was already a little bit nuts about they didn't build a statue for me when he committed genocide against them, and so he's already a little bit nuts. So I think this was the natural progression. I mean, I think when I first saw this episode, I did think it was a little bit silly the way he was like hunched in a corner and being like, talking to Zial and being like, I forgive you too, and giving the baseball to Cisco. But I've warmed up to it because I like it. I think it's a good way to end the episode. And it is a pivotal moment for Ducat, and like it's, as we're saying with Deep Space Nine, it's not just episodic; it pays off, and it will affect his storyline going forward. And I think we needed that. We needed that huge like character change at the end, and it really punctuates this episode. Alyssa, we'll start with you on this one.
I cry every time I see this scene. I just watched this like an hour ago, and I cry because Zial is a character that we've grown to love and care for, and she helped him escape. So to see her just, and when you first watch it, I mean, it's not like you're not expecting it tomorrow to be standing around the corner and shoot her. So it just seems to like come out of nowhere. So like, oh my God, Zial. But then also just, I actually feel a little bit for Ducat, because this seems to be the one person in the entire galaxy he does seem to actually legitimately care for, even if it is in a sort of twisted, like a delusional attachment, maybe a little bit of a possessive sort of way. But in a weird way, he does actually care for her, and that she may be the only one. I actually, combined with seeing Zial just suddenly die, this character that we've grown to care for, but also like I feel for Ducat oddly in this scene. It's just a really emotional scene for me. And I do think, yes, he was already delusional. You already start to see him snap in the scene that I was just quoting that's in my username. But victory was within our grasp. But I do think this was the straw that broke the camel's back. This was like the thing that just catapults him into insanity for a little while, is losing that one piece of stability, that one person that he actually did have some care for, even if it was in this twisted way, for that to be gone. I think that that was the thing that sent him completely over the deep end. He was already headed there, but this is what really does it. And I think it's just a really, really powerful scene.
So Jay came in the chat, says the thing is though, he has other kids. Yeah, but he obviously doesn't give a shit about them. So
they're not characters on the show.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and actually even one up on that is, not only is it the only person that he really cares about, I think he realizes this is the only person that actually cares about him. And so it's kind of that double loss right there. And yeah, I agree. It's emotional. For a moment, I was almost like, when Xiao tells him, like, I was the one that let them go. I was the one that helped to do this. And we have that scene beforehand where it's like, enemies of the state must be killed. I was concerned for a moment that Ducat would actually shoot his own daughter. I mean, only for like a half second, because I'm like, God, that would be horrible. He's not that bad. And then when Dumar does it from, off screen, it's like, you didn't see that person standing right there? Or you just came around just in time to hear that last little bit and then wait to react? Storytelling tropes. But it was still, I think, an emotional moment. I didn't like seeing it. I really was like, even at the end, was when Garrick goes to the infirmary. Even then, I'm even half hoping, is she not dead? Maybe she could be put in a medical coma. They could do a thing, but no, they definitely write her off right there. And I think in that kind of emotional way, Garrick's never going to know why she loved him, and Ducat's not going to get his brain back because his world just literally collapsed in front of him. He didn't get the victory that should have been there. Cisco is around, and his daughter is gone, and what this world doesn't even make sense. You can see how he would sort of snap at that little moment. And I think the previous scenes that we have, both the one with Wei Yun we discussed earlier, and the one that Alyssa's username refers to right afterwards, victory is taken from my grasp. You see that snapping starting to happen, the delusional world that he's in, and all that takes is that one little bit.
And I think the main point I would make to Jake Kamen in the chat, I'm not going to read your comment because it's a spoiler, but the main point I would make is that Ducat's he's already been unhinged like a little bit, even like before this episode. He's always been a little out there. The shit he's saying about why didn't they build a statue for me just indicates that he's not really all there. So for him to go from that to snapping is not that far of a journey.
Yeah. And thank you for recognizing that was a spoiler, because I was going to actually just read his comment. Yeah, we're trying to. It's for Darren's sake. Darren hasn't watched it yet. But yes, compared to the character mentioned in that comment or any other character, Ducat was already well on his journey to snapping, and I just, as I said, I think it's just the straw that broke the camel's back. But he was already almost there. In that previous scene, when victory was within our grasp, I mean, he was already almost there. He was on his way. That was just the last straw that just sent him over the edge.
All right, so come to the end of the episode, so it's now time for my titular question. Alyssa, I already know your answer, so I'll start with you. Where would you put this on your own personal top 25? Higher, lower, around the same?
Well, Mark, let me tell you, in my Star Trek Top 100, it was my number 11, which I think makes it thus far the closest that you and I have come to each other in rankings. Like it's only two off, and I think that's the closest we've come thus far.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So I have it sitting just outside my top 10. Wanted it to be in my top 10, but then there was 10 other episodes I also wanted it to be my top 10. So it's just outside of it, but it's only two off of where you have it in number 9.
All right, and so Darren, I don't know what you're gonna say. So where would you have this? Higher, closer to number 1, around the same, lower, further back?
Probably a little bit lower. I don't know if it'd be a whole lot, because I mean, there's a lot the episode does give. Again, great space battle. It really does pay off that particular arc. I like the dynamics and everything. Certainly, that scene with Wayun and Ducat is top notch. I loved every little bit of it. The only thing that would probably, like I say, pull it back is just the way that they ended it. Just didn't totally resonate with me. Now, as I continue to watch the show and see where that goes in relation to the rest of the overall story, that may adjust where my positioning is again. And I'm not like syncing it like this would be number 30 at least. Oh my God, what? You know, it's absolutely nothing like that. The fact that it's 11 for Alyssa, I totally get that. Where it's, I mean, that's not really all that much of a difference. But I think even a couple of the recent episodes that we've covered recently, I think resonate a little bit stronger with me. But like I said, that may change as I finish getting through the rest of DS9.
Well, I will say, just from my perspective, is that when I say I like that ending, it's kind of not even taking into account what comes after this. Just going up to this point, I think that ending was justified. So I don't know if you're going to feel much better about it.
Yeah, that's why I said, there's still room in my top 10 is what I'm trying to say right now. Let's see where everything else settles out.
I mean, the reason why it's so high for me is Mark Alamo's performance. I mean, that's what puts it over the top for me. As he goes over the top and into insanity, it puts this episode over the top for me to make it and this high up in my top 25, my top 100.
Yeah, I mean, some people like his performance better in the next episode that he appears in, but that episode was just okay for me. Like, it was a bit, I don't know, too much at times.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I liked more Cisco in that episode, but we don't want to get But yeah, no, this is the best Ducat episode.
Well, yeah, and what it looks like and feels like the kind of end of almost the Ducat arc, I think that's even like a bigger one because, yeah, it seems like after this, like, well, he's out of the picture. You're probably not going to see him unless you do the one episode where it's always like, well, we got to get him out of prison because we need his codes, which is only a retinal actual DNA-based stab through the brainstem code that we have to have his physical body there and alive. And then we'll let him go or he escapes or he dies in a heroic, meaning. Don't give me any spoilers if that's what actually happens. I'm just making that up off the top of my head. Enterprise. Actually, we did that earlier with Cisco and his old security chief.
Oh, God, what's his name? Eddington,
yeah. Which I really enjoyed their little back and forth for a while there. But it was like, okay, I got to get you out for one last little thing, and then we lose you. Okay. Right.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Eddington myself. But anyway.
My Ducat's so much better. I'm not comparing those characters at all. No.
Easily. Some people, I think one person even said they thought Kai Wynn was the best villain of DS9. I'm like, no, she's good, but no way. Like, it's got nothing on Ducat and Wii.
I'd really put Wynn as more of an adversary than a villain. I mean, yeah, she does some messed up stuff, but I mean, she's always got that smile on her face. I mean,
well, she's more of a get off my screen character.
Yeah,
it's so annoying.
Agreed.
But yeah, I mean, but part of why this is in my top 10 is, as I said, it's representing the whole arc, sort of. But even this episode itself. As I say, I picked it for a reason because I think it's damn good. I think it's probably the best action episode of the franchise. Cool. So we'll go ahead and end this there. Thank you so much for everyone joining. We had Brandon, Jay Kamen, and Jordan in the chat, and Aaron. Hello, good to see you. Thanks everyone for stopping by, and everyone else who's watching, and everyone else checking this out in the archives. Thanks so much for watching. Now, Alyssa and Darrin, if you just want to, I know you're really not doing much on your channel, but if you want to give a shout out to what you're up to, Alyssa, we'll start with you.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm up to now is I just did Prodigy reviews. One review for episodes 1 through 10, and another for 11 through 20, season 2, of course. Otherwise, taking it pretty easy on my channel. Mostly you will see me here on Mondays, talk House of the Dragon. And then I'll be back here next month to talk about number 8, hopefully, maybe. um, but if you want to see some of the Star Trek videos I've done in the past, come on over to Alyssa Jean's Reviews.
I am doing nothing but supporting these wonderful people in their review shows. Pretty much just House of Dragon right now, and then doing these Star Trek, whatever Mark will let me jump on board. Really excited to dive back into these worlds, and I'm just going to look forward to when we discuss season 2 of The Expanse in a couple of months. So, fun things coming up, mostly House of the Dragon, Monday, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, right here on Enchantment of Eternity.
All right. So if you're finding me for the first time, my name's Mark, channel's Enchantment of Eternity. As Darrin just said, here every Monday doing House of the Dragon, and every month doing my top 25 Star Trek episodes. Next month will be number 8, and also in addition to that, I also just covered Prodigy. My episodes 1 through 10 video just went up on my channel yesterday, and next week will be the second half, 11 through 20. And also covering Star Trek Next Generation, 1 episode at a time, currently in season 5. So you can check me out for that. So thanks everyone for joining. Great to have you all, and we'll see you next time.